The banner across the front of my parents' house felt like a fist to the chest. Congratulations, Lydia, for preserving the family home. The words burned into me, cruel in their simplicity. My throat tightened so violently it was as if invisible fingers were cutting off my air. The phone slipped from my hands, striking the balcony railing before tumbling to the concrete with a metallic clatter. Beyond it, the Seattle skyline wavered in a haze of tears I refused to let spill. On the phone speaker, Mrs. Underwood's voice carried on, steady and sympathetic. Rachel, dear, I thought you should see this. What they've done isn't right. Not after all you sacrificed. Mrs. Underwood had lived beside my parents since before I could walk. Even after I left for Seattle, she'd somehow kept her friendship with my mother alive. That bridge had remained, though my own ties had frayed. I bent to pick up my phone, my knees hitting the cold concrete hard enough that I knew bruises would bloom. On the screen, the photo she had sent glowed with devastating clarity. Lydia stood beneath the banner like a heroine, her smile radiant. My parents flanked her, beaming, their faces alight with pride reserved only for her. The same parents who had called me in desperation 3 years ago. Voices choked with fear of losing the house, begging me for help. My name is Rachel. I'm 29 years old, a financial analyst by profession. This is the story of how I seized back the truth when my family tried to erase me. My fingers trembled as I zoomed in on the image, examining every detail of that fabricated celebration. My sister basking in applause for something she hadn't done. My parents practically glowing at her side. None of them carried even a trace of what had been stripped from me to make that moment possible. 3 years, 36 transfers, $72,000 drained from my savings account. Job opportunities turned down because relocation wasn't possible while I covered their bills. My own apartment shrunk to bare essentials so I could keep their lights on, their roof intact, their future secured. All of it now attributed to Lydia, the golden child who had never given a single dollar. Out on the balcony, the Space Needle stood tall against the horizon, a silent witness to the moment something inside me fractured. Not in fury, but in clarity. I had just posted about my new apartment 3 days ago. My first real purchase, the symbol of independence after years of sacrifice. My parents and Lydia had chosen this week to unveil their banner. Their timing wasn't innocent. It was deliberate. It was a blade designed to cut. Sliding the door shut behind me, I stepped back inside my apartment. The sparsity of my furniture reminded me exactly what had been surrendered to fund their security. My hand drifted to the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside lay the physical record of everything I had given away. Bank statements, copies of texts, desperate pleas preserved on paper. Just this once, Rachel. Please, we'll lose the house if you don't help. Just this once. Repeated 36 times. I spread the papers across the counter, each line of numbers testifying to what my family had tried to erase. $1,500 that first month. $2,300 when taxes threatened them. $3,000 for the roof repair. Each figure another piece of my life siphoned away. Lydia had always been the star in our family, the one who earned ovations. My accomplishments had always been the faint background hum, easily ignored. Her debate trophies filled shelves while my math awards went unmentioned. Her graduation was an event. My promotions warranted only a distracted, "That's nice, honey." For years, I accepted it. I told myself it was simply the way our family worked, that my role was quiet, supportive, secondary. But not anymore. Not after this. The Seattle apartment I had just purchased was supposed to be my liberation, a first real step into a life shaped on my own terms. Morning light was meant to signal freedom. Instead, it revealed betrayal. With steady hands, I opened my laptop and began cataloging every detail. Transfers logged, screenshots attached, messages paired with exact timestamps, each entry precise, professional, irrefutable. By midnight, the document was complete, an undeniable map of the truth. Then, as if the universe was waiting, an email arrived. My cousin Julia. Family appreciation dinner, this Saturday at Morton's in Seattle. Celebrating Lydia for saving the family home. Hope you can join us. Julia and I had stayed close. She texted me often. unaware of the sacrifices I'd made in silence. Staring at her email, my reflection faint in the glow of the screen, I typed 2 words. I'll be there. For the next 3 days, I lived in 2 worlds. Outwardly, I worked as usual, analyzing markets, drafting recommendations, speaking to clients. Inwardly, I sharpened my resolve. Every pause, every breath filled with rehearsals of what I would reveal. Saturday arrived. I parked 2 blocks from Morton's, dressed simply in black, the fabric stark against the weight of what I carried. Through the glass windows, I watched my family gathered like a scene from a play. My uncles clapped my father on the back. My aunts leaned in to hug Lydia, her emerald dress shimmering as if she had been born for the spotlight. My mother glided between tables, a hostess reveling in pride. I waited until the lights dimmed, until the slideshow began. A montage of the house through seasons, captions praising Lydia's sacrifice, voices layering falsehood over falsehood. My father's words carried through the room, smug and certain. We are so fortunate Lydia preserved our family legacy. That was my cue. I stepped inside. Without hesitation, I connected my USB drive to the laptop running the presentation. A few swift keystrokes, and the slideshow of lies vanished. In its place, truth. The screen filled with bank transfers. Rows of figures, each stamped with dates, each tied to my accounts. Then the messages appeared, projected for all to see. We just need $2,000 this week, or the bank will act. Your sister's struggling, Rachel. Please, just this once. I promise we'll make it up to you. Gasps rippled through the room. Silverware clattered against plates as the silence thickened. I stepped forward to the center of the room, no longer background noise. This time, they couldn't erase me. The click of my heels against the hardwood echoed like a clock winding down, each step pulling me closer to what could no longer stay hidden. My voice didn't falter when I began. 3 years, $72,000. I let the number hang in the air. Each syllable was a stone dropped into still water. Every month you told me it was the last time. Every month, another transfer, another promise. My mother froze mid-motion, her champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand. My father's jaw locked, his expression hard as stone. Lydia's shoulders curved in on themselves, her emerald dress losing its sheen beneath the scrutiny of the room. I never asked for thanks, I said steadily, pointing to the screen where bank transfers and desperate text messages flickered in harsh light. But I won't accept lies. The silence thickened until my Uncle David broke it with a cough. Is this true, Thomas? He asked carefully, his eyes on my father. My father's gaze darted, searching for an escape. Rachel's always been careful with money. She offered to help when things were difficult. 72,000 isn't help, Mark, my cousin, said firmly, realization dawning in his tone. That's carrying the entire weight. My mother stepped forward, reaching out as though a touch could erase everything. Sweetheart, we wanted to surprise you. We were going to put your name on the deed. A bitter laugh tore from me, sharper than I'd intended. It didn't even sound like my own. I don't want my name on your deed. I want the truth acknowledged. Murmurs spread across the room like wind through dry grass. Aunts exchanged uneasy glances. Cousins stared, wide-eyed, watching the family story unravel in real time. My name was erased, I said, calm even as my chest burned. My sacrifice was turned into someone else's triumph. I will not let that stand. For the first time, Lydia couldn't hold herself tall. Her eyes lifted to mine, and in them was something new, shame. I didn't know, she whispered. You never asked, I replied. My tone wasn't cruel. It was only the truth. My father gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. This isn't the place for family disputes, he said tightly. When you hung a banner across the home I saved, you made it public, I countered. I'm just correcting the story. The slideshow continued to loop behind me. Transfer after transfer, message after message. Evidence that couldn't be denied. Then, unexpectedly, my Aunt Sophia rose, her chair scraping back. She came to my side and took my hand. Julia followed, then Mark, then others until nearly half the room had crossed over. Not against my family, but against the lie. I had braced myself for anger, ridicule, dismissal. I hadn't prepared for this, for validation. Rachel preserved the Davidson family home. Aunt Sophia said clearly, her voice carrying weight. And she deserves to be recognized. My mother's face collapsed, not with fury, but with the ache of being seen too clearly. My father stared at his hands. Lydia wilted into her chair. There was nothing left for me in that room. I unplugged my USB drive, walked past the hushed crowd, and pushed through the heavy glass doors. Seattle's night air met me, crisp and untainted, filling my lungs with a freedom I hadn't felt in years. 6 blocks later, my phone buzzed with messages, not from my parents or Lydia, but from cousins and relatives who had witnessed everything. We didn't know. You should have told us sooner. I'm sorry we celebrated a lie. 3 days later, a certified envelope arrived. Inside, a check for $72,000 and a note in my father's handwriting. The truth is easier to deny than to face. I'm trying to face it now. I held the check in my hands and realized it wasn't what I'd been waiting for. The money wasn't the point. What I had wanted, what I had always wanted, was visibility, acknowledgement, proof that I had existed in this story. I deposited the check and used it as a down payment on a house near Lake Washington. Not a cramped apartment this time, a home, with a yard, with space for roots to grow. When the housewarming came, I invited family, extended family, the ones who had stood with me that night. Not my parents, not Lydia. That would take more than a check and a sentence. Aunt Sophia brought a plant for the garden. Uncle David helped hang curtains. My cousins filled the kitchen with laughter and wine glasses, voices echoing against the fresh walls until the house began to feel alive. That night, after the last glass was washed and everyone had gone, I sat alone on the back porch, watching the moonlight dance across the lake. The weight of 3 long years finally slipped from my shoulders, not because I had forgotten, but because at last I had been seen. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "We miss you." I didn't reply. Some conversations can't be had through screens or across crowded tables. Some truths need time and space before new things can grow. 2 months later, an email from Lydia appeared in my inbox. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, somewhere neutral, halfway between our lives. It was stiff, uncomfortable, but we left with the first fragile threads of understanding, something that might, one day, weave itself into forgiveness. With my parents, things remained distant. We texted here and there, but true reconciliation would demand more than checks and apologies scrawled on paper. It would require them to face everything fully without hiding. In the meantime, I took a photo from my back porch. The lake, the garden waiting to bloom, the moonlight across the water. I posted it with a simple caption, "This one is mine." The Space Needle glowed faintly in the distance, a reminder of how far I had climbed. I was no longer a family shadow, no longer invisible. I was Rachel, the woman who had saved a house, who had walked away from silence, who had built something of her own. Your worth isn't decided by the roles others write for you, or the shadows they try to press you into. It's in the resilience you shape from struggle, in the truths you refuse to bury, and in the courage to stand in your own light, even if you must stand there alone.